What's going on, everybody? LK here, back at it again with another video. Today, a little bit more Melty Blood for y'all. This is kind of going to be Melty Blood week. The game is new. I want to share a lot of stuff with y'all about the game. And today, I specifically want to talk about the movement. So, I am a Melty Blood beginner, just like y'all. So, I'm going to try to share with you guys a couple of things to try to think about when thinking about how to move around in Melty Blood. So why a Malty Blood movement guide specifically as opposed to like other games? I've talked about Neutral and like Dragon Ball before and Guilty Gear, and one of the biggest things about Malty Blood is that there is actually a lot of similarities to Dragon Ball, and one of them is movement. So not even specifically that they have like the same type of movement options, but just the main thing of you are able to move very freely in this game. And one of the main things that really helped me out when I was starting Malty Blood way back when is that I quickly learned that despite having all these movement options, it's not you should be running around like crazy. So I'm gonna try to break down a couple of these concepts for y'all. So if you've never played Malty Blood before, one of the biggest things is that unlike a lot of other anime style fighting games, there's not really restrictions on your movement options, and specifically when you double jump, you still have an air dash option. So there's actually a lot of variety in how you can move around the screen. One thing they changed about Malty Blood type Lumina that I think is really important is going to be the dash. So this is actually where we're going to start. Might be weird. You might be like, man, this is a Malty Blood movement video and you're going to start with ground movement, but hey, here we are. So we're going to talk about the dash. So this is pretty fast. Like there's some characters in Actress again that have pretty fast ground speed, but I think in general the ground speed is really fast in this game. And one of the biggest things is that you can't really dash block. You have to cancel into something. So here's me trying to do it. I'm inputting block like pretty early here. I'm definitely doing dash and block low, and like, I have to basically have been pretty slow here. There's definitely some recovery on this. So the trade-off for the dash being really fast is that you can't dash block. Like, you have to do something like a button or like some type of movement or jump or shield or activate. So what's the point of the run done? So the main thing is that it's just really fast, and it's going to be a response to a lot of things that you might think seems to be too strong. So let's talk about jumping. So this game, again, you have double jump and air dash. You're able to move really freely, but despite being able to move like this, you don't really want to go up here so much. Not only are you really vulnerable, but as I mentioned in my tips video, if you double jump before someone gets under you, you won't turn around. And a very common theme in this version of the game is, and Melty Blood in general, and side note, this is something that I was really spoiled with my character, you don't have a lot of moves that hit cross up. So you don't have a lot of moves that hit behind as a theme. So going up here to the top of the screen, not generally a very good strategy. Now, I've heard rumors that like this has upper body invincibility, but overall, I felt like it's pretty unreliable. Plus, you don't really have normal cancel options, which is actually pretty uncommon for Melty Blood. You only have special cancel options here. So our next question is, how are we going to deal with people who are jumping a lot then? Like this. Well, this is a very simple recording. Like, you know, the main thing is that a lot of people describe Melty Blood as a game about aerial combat because you have so many movement options, and you will definitely hear Melty Blood players, a lot of time Melty Blood players, some of them will be like, one of the things I like is the freedom and how I feel like I could basically do whatever I want here. I'm the Debbie Downer. I'm not really in the group that thinks that. I similarly to Guilty Gear, I sort of think like, while you have a lot of options, you can kind of box things into a small set of options. So first we're going to talk about what should you do against people who do this? Like, let's say they're just jumping around a lot. So how are you going to protect yourself from jumping? So there's a couple of things you can do. Ideally, you want to stay low to the ground. And what I mean is you're going to be aiming for like this type of spacing where you want their air normal to whiff, but you don't want to be on the ground. You want to be on the air while doing this. You want to be at like this type of range all the time. Especially, you want to keep in mind too that you sort of want to play like either just outside their air dash range, or maybe at a space where you can go under them just in case. This is going to be a really, really important baseline thing. If you play low to the ground in general, it'll be pretty difficult for somebody to get under you. Like, I'm like super overextending in this example, where if you're playing up here, it is quite easy to do, and when they run under you, you're going to be quite vulnerable. Another important concept as far as movement and playing the neutral is going to be how to deal with people who are jumping. You might have been like, ah, you just said that, but this first thing I said is more of like your general spacing, and the second thing is actually more about like addressing what they do when they land from a jump. So in this example here, we're going to use the same old recording here. But the difference is, rather than thinking about the spacing here where we want to sort of be outside of the air dash range so we can see what they could do, and then maybe we'll pull up, maybe we'll approach on our own, and we're going to be focusing on staying low to the ground. Here, we're going to be trying to specifically catch the jump of the character. So a nice thing about this game, you probably know me from playing Kohaku if you know about my Malty Blood days, but I actually also played Red Arcade a lot. Like, she's one of my favorite characters in this series. Her old 5A doesn't hit crouchers, but in this version it does. And Half Moon Kohaku had a jab to hit crouchers, but Crescent Moon did not. So one thing that was a really common strategy that I would use is, while staying at this position where I'm kind of like trying to understand whether or not they're going to dash at me, or they're going to float and wait. Since a lot of people think of Malty Blood as a jumpy kind of aerial combat game, I would aim for this point. If they're going to be moving around like this, then one thing I could do, even if my character didn't have an anti-air, I could at least aim for their jump, and they would have to either hold their ground or actually stop me by pressing a button. So while this movement here is a pretty simple example, we can also try to mix in a little bit of so here I'm just going to play the range a little bit. Right. This is a very slow example, of course, but it's something that's really important to aim for. And considering that, like, some characters have moon drives that work as anti-airs, there are a couple of characters that have legitimate anti-airs too that aren't the launcher. You can try to aim for this thing as well. Next would be about general air combat too. So I talked about anti-jump and spacing yourself, staying low to the ground. So there are going to be cases too where you're going to be under somebody like this, and where in a GG style game you're probably going to be trying to match like 6P, or maybe you will try to run under them. And run under is very strong in this game as well, for the same reason I listed before. But there are going to be cases as well where you can and should try to pick a rising aerial as your anti-air. Ideally your fastest one. I'm going to assume that your jump A is going to be your fastest, but in this case, if you can get good at this, it's really important. So there was a time where you had something called EX Shield. So Shield, of course, deserves its own video. I'll go talk about this later as I understand it better on my own. But in this game, Shield is not as reliable as an anti-air, because when you do Shield, you get into this guessing game where you have like your various counter follow-ups, and like you have to choose for them. When previous Melty Bloods, you had like a fast parry where you can like follow up for normal straight up, or you could do a shield counter if you're in a certain groove, or you could do a special move. There's a bunch of different things you could do. The long story short though is that in old Melty Blood games, you could use the parry as an anti-air, where in this game it's not guaranteed because you go into the shield guessing game. So it's going to be a little bit more important for you to use rising aerials sometimes as anti-airs in this case. The last general concept I want to talk about is definitely going to be about the concept of commitment. I talk about this in basically every fighting game, anime fighting game, so I'm going to review it in case you haven't watched my other videos. But this is the concept of how fast the total duration of your move is, and how safe this is going to keep you. So this is how you're going to pick your buttons. So in case you don't know, a fighting game move is typically split up into startup, active frames, and recovery. So the startup is how fast it takes for it to begin. Then the active frames is the actual attacking hitting, and the recovery is the rest. So for a move like this, you notice that she's starting for a while, and then there's a couple of hits, and then at the end, if I'm to whiff, there's like a little recovery on it. So one thing about Malty Blood is that generally, you know, like every character has their ground moves and stuff, but because everyone's jumping a lot, you don't see it so much. So you see a lot more of these jump ins. So rather than focusing a lot on your ground moves at the start, if you're a new player, I would say get really accustomed to like where you should place your air moves. So for example, I play Red Arcuine, and this is a change that has been honestly kind of frustrating me. I've been trying to get better at this, where like her instant air dash jump B, the immediate one doesn't hit crouchers, where in previous versions, and honestly, a MBAA player can correct me because I'm a little bit rusty on this, but definitely an NBAC, like the really classic Melty Blood, like this would hit a croucher. But in MBAA, you can get it to hit, but it's pretty tough. In this game, it's like really hard. It can be done, but as you can see, I'm doing it mega deep here. The main purpose of this move is to catch people above you. So look at how high she's swiping with her hand here. So that means if I see someone who's kind of hopping around like this, even if they're using single jumps here, then I could aim to snipe them a little bit with my jump B because it hits above me. Like that. So for a character that's sitting crouching on the ground, the main option I would use is actually this. So the nice thing about her jump C is, as you can see here, she hits very high above her and she hits very high below her. It's slower than her jump B and her jump A, but you really don't have to aim this. But again, the main thing you're going to be thinking about is this move is not as fast, so I have to preempt this quite a bit. Then jump A is your general all around. It basically is what it looks like. She kind of swipes in front and above her a little bit and below her. So it's really important to pick the right normal for the right situation in this game. Next, as far as movement options, so I've mostly been talking about like watching your opponent's movement and how you should react. So as far as movement options, definitely the first thing is it's quite uncommon for moves to hit behind. And again, when you overshoot, you won't correct. In Red Arcuine's case, this is the only move that hits from behind, and like quite honestly, it's a pretty precise thing. It's not something you can super overshoot. I'm trying to do it, and it's kind of hard. Honestly, I'm doing my best. It's to the point where I've been thinking that, oh, maybe I should do either this when I think I'm going to overshoot, because our air dash is longer than it used to be, or I could do this and I will just stay on the same side. I'm actually not sure. I'm still thinking about this one. Be very familiar with your character's air dash range and how far it goes, because it's crucial that you do not overshoot. If you overshoot, you are definitely negative, and your opponent can and will press buttons, trust me. So as far as super jump, originally you were able to super jump in any direction MBAA. Correct me if I'm wrong. A little fuzzy on this. It's been a very long time since I competed in that game, to be fair. And you could also double super jump in that game. But in this game, when you super jump, you always go forward. If you do down up or down up forward, you always go forward. That being said, though, it places you on a pretty far arc. So you can use it to vary up your movement, where like, let's say you double jump to this way, you'll go quite a bit further and your opponent will have to adjust on the fly to that. This game also has aerial drift like Dragon Ball when you neutral jump specifically. This plays a minor role in neutral, but honestly, this is more like a offense mix-up thing. It's something to keep in mind, though. It's not as dramatic as Dragon Ball Float, and characters do have anti-airs that are reliable in this game. This game doesn't have super dash gambling and stuff, so it's not going to be something you use as often as a general neutral tool. Just keep it in mind. Now, finally, I saved this for the end. It's going to be about the Moon Drive activation. This one is pretty new to me. It's not existed in Melty Blood before. And the main thing about this is that you get an extra jump, a third jump, and you get 2 air dashes, but the game explains it not in the best way. So you get 2 air dashes, but you don't get to air dash forward twice. Instead, you get access to both your forward air dash and your back air dash in the same jumping sequence. So essentially, the main thing I've been using the Moon Drive for as far as movement straight up is that if I'm in like some type of maybe seemingly checkmate situation, I'll use the Moon Drive activation, and now I have extra air options to protect me. Now, the last thing about Moondrive that you need to know is that while you have your 2 air dashes at the double jump height, you have nothing at the triple jump height. So basically, just pretend your chip when you activate Moondrive, go next to air dash. Okay, that was a lot. Let me know if you have any questions. Definitely feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.